Okay, Jerry. No, as I'm of a similar age to you, but I'm jealous that you were mixing in the parts that I never reached. Basically, there was a lot of big characters back in the days you were talking about. I knew Johnny Lights from afar. You knew him very well, and you knew the other big players very well.
I knew a lot of the big players involved in horse racing. You know, my background was there's two stories that I think from my background, two legendary stories, and they do both involve lights, funnily enough. And you know, it's a shame to keep having to talk about all just about John, but he was such a great character to be around. You know, I used to travel all over the country, meeting him, putting on with people around him. I was very friendly with his best friend David Martin, Georgie Williams, all those sort of people growing up and everything. And a lot of those people, there's two stories that stick out to me. Again, Folkestone being my local track, I went there a lot. There was one particular afternoon at Folkestone, I was with John, and I've been running around. He'd backed a horse of Murray Smith's or something, a jumper. He didn't have many horses, Murray Smith jumping, but he'd back, and it had got beaten. It was one of those sort of dreary days where nothing much was happening. Now, he was with Dudley Roberts, and Simon, Dudley's son, was there, and we were all sort of walking around talking and about the weather and everything. And it was about 20 minutes before the start of a novice hurdle. And there was no particular favourite in the race that stood out. It's like a 5-2 the field race, maybe 3 the field it went to. But there was a Barney Curley horse in the race, and it had 4 runs, maybe 3 runs. Anyway, it hadn't beaten another horse home. Coconut, 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 coconut. So that was something if it was any other person training it, you could put a complete line through. But I'd been involved with Barney Curley stuff before and getting wind of stuff and being involved and making really a good profit from it. One of my jobs that John used to get me to do, Johnny Lights used to get me to do, was to follow big trainers and punters around to see what they'd backed. John looked over and saw Barney Curley standing there with his big fedora on, his binoculars, and he said, "Find out what he's going to do. Just tail him, Jerry, whatever he does." So I stood 20 or 30 yards behind him. He just wandered around. Then all of a sudden he went up to a bookmaker who bet number 2 there. And he went very close to his ear and he whispered into his ear. And the guy looked very demurely back at Barney Curley and went and took the price of the horse off. Well, I didn't need to tell John anything because John had seen it himself. He said, "Jerry," he said, "whatever money you've got there," he said, "you put on this horse." It was 8-1. If anyone else had trained it, it would have been 80. It was mythical, couldn't win. So I started going up to the bookies, 7-1, 1,500 quid each way, no leave off, 750 quid each way, you got a bet. I went to all the big bookmakers that were there, you know, David Richardson, Billy Dyer, everything like that. 5 monkeys, 5-1 to 800 quid, 4-1, 4,000-1, 7-2, £1,500 each. I was even trying to get the place, but anything I could possibly get. Because my instructor, there was nothing wrong in getting too much on, but you'd want to have everything you possibly could on. 5-2. I think out the 14 grand that I had in my pocket, I'd got about another 700 quid left, and I remember having the last bet at 7-4 to £700. And then people were sick and tired of it by then. It was a small market there midweek, and they weren't taking a penny on the other horses. Anyway, the race went into play, and John and myself walked up to where you used to view. There was that big shuttered building at the end of Folkestone, like a pavilion type building, and there was 3 little sort of steps up. John and I were standing there, and John got his binoculars out and he was looking at the Curley horse. He was in about 3rd place, went into 2nd with 4 to jump. Bearing in mind he's had, you know, the prices we've had about this horse, it returns a lot of money. We're talking about, even at those prices, 60, 65, 70,000 pound King's ransom. Even the way John played, it was big money. He said, "This is pissed up, Jerry." And he's looking, and now it's taken the lead. And just as he was smiling on his face, and there was that silence where the commentator was saying, and you know, 2 Fleet Street, whatever the horse was called, has gone 3 lengths clear, cantering. And a man from nowhere appeared behind Johnny Lights and tickled his stomach, and he said, "You've done your money, John." And I remember it was like out of one of those old films. Again, the just time stood still, and John went, "What are you talking about?" He said, "You've done your money, John." And it was Barney Curley, and he pulled away. And John pulled the binoculars back up, it was 8 in front, and then from nowhere, Murphy, who was riding the horse, just pulled the reins, looked down and pulled it up. And there was a deadly silence at the racetrack. I was speechless. And then about 3 or 4 minutes later, it was walked past the stands with its head collar on. And we stood there all in disbelief, and John said, there weren't courts of inquiry normally when when you've done your money, you've done your money. You don't really want to know how it went on. But John went over and he said to the bookmaker who took it off the board, he said, "How much did he have on with you when you took it off the board to cause me to get involved like I got?" And he said, "Well, you know," he said to me, "there's loads of people that are tailing me at the races and putting their nose in my business, all take-out merchants." He said, and he offered me £200. He said he'd give it me next meeting just to take it off his board. And that was all it was. He never had 1 single cent on it, and it was obviously pre-arranged that he would pull the horse up when it was in front. And that is a great Barney Curley story.
Now, you said they call you odds on. And you've
obviously
made your punting pay.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody says it's very difficult to win backing horses at the front, so you're obviously very good at sorting the wheat from the chaff.
Yeah, I was, as I say, potentially most of the year I didn't do anything gambling wise. I just went to work and put on for people, but I didn't sort of lay bets myself really. Even if I didn't think something was off and it was a big price, I'd still put it on. But my Hunter Chase, I used to take a Hunter Chase card from a particular person, well, a few people really. Hunter Chases was my thing. And there's another great story about, I was with Lights, David Martin was there, Mickey Fletcher was there, he was betting on this particular day, and we were all standing there. We'd got one of the form judges had told us that this was a very good thing in this particular race. I hadn't seen the horse run before, but my friend that had said this is a world beater, and it was put in about 6 to 4. So when we got to the racetrack, it was the second race. I was with Lights. John said to me, "Right, good thing, Jerry. Your man," I said, "my man says this is a good thing." And I've been dealing with this guy for a long time. They called him Whiskers. Barry Lewis, his name was. But all the other major judges, because there's only one major point-to-point judge. There's a few, but everyone knows the Godfather's Mark Hill. That time in life, I only knew who he was from a distance. I didn't know he was the big bookmaker and everything, but he's Don Corleone. So Whiskers liked to think that he was in the league of these other big sort of bookmakers sort of kind of tips to people that were responsible for, they were just, Mark's just a great judge. So Lights said, "Well, we're going to take this guy's card because you say he's brilliant, Jerry." I said, "Oh, he is, yeah, okay, right, 20 grand. So I went up to one of the bookmakers. I said, "Oh, I'm putting on for John, £15,000, number 6. Yeah, sure, no problems. Could have been someone big. I can't remember. It was a bookmaker, the stature of someone like Pat Whelan, somebody like that, a big bookmaker. And I had another 7 grand with somebody else. I had another 12,000 until I'd put 40,000 on this horse. So I went back to Lights. I said, "Oh, you've had 40,000. Now, I was quite entrusted really, because Lights liked to put his own bets on, and Lights had unlimited credit. He paid after the race. He never had to. Anyway, the race went into play. It went off about 4 to 5. This particular horse. John's looking through the glasses. People are looking at the race. It's in about 3rd place, but the second in has got a soft, easy lead off the front, and it's going really well. The others are all bashing away behind, but it's still motionless, the other horse, in 4th place, but it's 15 off the lead. So John's looked over and gone, "Can he not get a move on your man on this horse?" So I said, "Oh, I don't know who rides it or anything." He said, "Wow," he said, "it's, he said, if it hits one, it's going to be 30 behind." And that's how John would look at it. So it's made up the ground up, gone into second, and we're all waiting for the inevitable to happen, that the gap will shorten now to a couple of lengths and it will come and win. It was going well, but that never happened. The second favourite went further and further and further clear, coming to the last. And to stop some of the collateral damage, Mickey Fletcher asked for 10, I bet 10 monkeys on. He held my arm because he thought I was too young and probably didn't think I had the money. But anyway, that part of the bet won, but the tip was tailed off. Don't even think it finished second or third. So John said, tell me a little bit more about your mate. And I said, well, and with that, the other guy that had come with us said, oh, Whiskers, oh, he plays Father Christmas, Santa Claus, down at the grotto at Dartford at Christmas time. He said, so I've just done 40 grand on the say-so of someone who plays Father Christmas at the Dartford grotto. Someone called Whiskers. Yeah, and the other guy, he said he works in a petrol garage. He said, I take the best cards off of the best, the most well-informed people and the greatest gamblers of the turf, and I'm just done 40 grand on the say-so of Santa Claus. He said, Jerry, get out of my sight, and I'd advise you not to come near me for a few days. And I had to make my own way home.
Right, Jerry, we've got 4 minutes left. I've got 2 questions, so we've got to make these punchy. You recently, don't want to be negative, but you recently featured in a racing blogger video where it was quite sad viewing.
Really?
Well, what you had to say was quite sad. Were you talking just about that particular meeting in that particular pitch, or did you, for anyone that hasn't watched it, tell us what you said.
Well, more that particular meeting in that particular pitch, because it was, but then again, as you know, it's, if you're in a poorer pitch, then it's easy to be slightly more negative because you're going to be taking less money. And of course, if you're in a better pitch, just for example, Kaluki have got some very good pitches, and then we've got some that maybe aren't quite so strong. But what I said with the Stephen Platt Power blog, I was amazed. I don't have a Twitter account or anything, but when I found out that it had 1,200,000 plus views, I was quite shocked. And my daughter said, well, you should get a Twitter account, Dad, and be part of this new world. And I thought, well, Twitter's not a new thing. It's been around for years, or X as it's called. But I did feel at the time, he caught me on a time where I'd met some friends earlier that day, ex-jockeys, people, good punters, and they were all very down on how things are at the moment. And I suppose I can say what I feel. There's freedom of speech everywhere, and I feel that this wonderful, racing to me is like a beautiful girlfriend. Someone that I fell in love with, that I've worked in, I've always been passionate about, and I've only ever seen the positive sides to it. But in the last 10 years of me sort of coming back and being more involved, I have seen such a change. And I only ever see people bigging everything up all the time and saying how wonderful it is. I saw a picture of a bookmaker's board back in the 80s where it was £10 minimum. We're taking these bets, and it doesn't matter about pitch, because you could be betting 3 or 4 on the rail at Ascot. People still take a £2.50 each way bet. And I think the sport's moved on enough to encourage people to bet slightly bigger. Because as a product, if people don't start having a little bit more on, which is what I said, the bookmaking side of things will evaporate, because we haven't got the big punters there. We've got a few people now that might come, like modern day, like they call some guy the bagman or something like that. It used to be 100 bagmen. He wouldn't have even featured in the top 50. People were having those bets back, in years and years ago. There is very little money. There might be money from, from Star Sports perspective in the offices and coming back, but I don't see. People used to come up and ask what your maximum was, and you would say, well, you can have £50,000 on this or 100 grand. Now they come up and ask what the minimum is. We need to move the stake up in horse racing. We need to encourage people to have more on. Spend a tenner, a £5 each way nowadays. To use the generic talk. A coffee's £4.20, a pint's £8.50. We need to get up. People have got more leisure choice now. We've got this wonderful sport that's, Arab patronage. We've got people that are spending fortunes on horses. And these bookmakers are trying to make it colourful and interesting. How are they going to do that when all their £2.50 each way love on this and that? It's fine, but it's too small.
Yes or no? You still going to be in the game in 10 years?
Yes, I'll still be working within it because it's probably like a dinosaur. It's probably all I know, but I would only go out on the big days. I think at the moment something's dramatically got to change with midweek racing. I just don't know how bookmakers go out midweek, unless it's a social event for them and they use their own family to work for them. How on earth can you pay for 2 staff to go out, get the badge out, to take all these very small bets? A few weeks ago at Ascot, one race, I think the biggest bet we took was 80 quid or something, you know. It's on a pitch that years ago, you would have took substantially more. It's difficult. My love affair's still there, and I will still be in the game, but I think things need to really change. I think we could lose all of, I think barring Cheltenham and the big festivals, your Goodwoods, your Ascots, I think the fodder racing, your Worcesters, your places like, where there's not a big horse racing community, I think those other things in the smaller areas will fade away, I think, and it will become a smaller pie.
But at least we're still going to see you in it.
You'll always see me in it.
So Jerry White, thank you very much.
It's an absolute pleasure.